All right, try number two, day number two. I'm gonna fucking one day know what the fuck to do with OBS. But back again talking about the preseason top 25 coaches poll. We got Lewis here, who is gracious enough to make the effort to be here. Yesterday, we had a pretty great turnout. We had, just to make sure that we acknowledge their presence, was Andy of Illinois. We had Jake of NC State, Matt of Oregon. We had the infamous Joey Agresti of Vanderbilt. We also had a few spot appearances from Robbie of Arkansas and Matt of North Carolina. We also got the color commentary of Wes Hogarth at the end, and he added some very last minute flavor. But unfortunately, due to some audio issues and updating equipment, I failed to get this stuff rolling. So the agenda is the same as what it's supposed to be yesterday. We're going to go through some of the teams. We're going to highlight some of the notable projections that are expected for the team, highlight some of the challenging schedules that they have on there, make note of some of the voting from the coaches poll. In total, we had 24 submissions from the coaches poll for the preseason, which is great. I appreciate everyone taking the time to give us their opinions and perspectives. But first and foremost, we'll kind of highlight the few teams that were just outside the top 25 in voting, and we felt it was worth highlighting them. The first one being Marshall. Marshall is actually the reigning national champion from the first season of the league. They made it up to the 29th in the coaches poll this year. Kind of unsuspectingly, but worth noting that they're also the highest voted Big 12 North team, so a lot of voters seem to hold the same sentiment to a greater degree that the Big 12 North is one of the weaker divisions in the league. They did receive one first place vote, and I think, if we're being transparent, I think it was Jay who submitted it, but he gets to beat his chest. He's a defending champ, so him giving himself a first place vote isn't really as bad as some others. Some notable games on his schedule this season is Week 1 versus Colorado, Week 4 versus Northwestern, Week 5 versus Texas, Week 6 versus Oklahoma State. And then I think his biggest division game this year is going to be Week 10 versus Army, which it very well could decide that division. So some of his top players this year are expected to be Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, who kind of carried him to a lot of his success last year, as well as projected to be his top quarterback is a Davis Mills. I don't know, Lou, if you have any notes you want to put in on Jay's team. I think he's not as good as he was last year, but just as dangerous.
I played him last year. The team was definitely better, at least on paper. I mean, you don't know how some of this stuff unfolds. His running back group took a hit, obviously. Now he's just kind of in a position where he's got to have a guy or two get hurt or something happen there for his guys to be useful. In terms of the rookies he added, most of them are at wide receiver. Hasn't made any taxi squad moves yet, and he didn't make any last year either, so I don't suspect him to put his guys on taxi. But just one of those weird things where it's like, hey, last year, to win it, I think now you got to play a little bit more conservative. Because even if he has the best Big 12 team or Big 12 North team, I don't see this team as a really. I don't know where it ended up. I think you said 29. I don't see this as a top 25 team. But I've been wrong before.
Yeah, and per the Martin metric, which those who don't know, Matt Martin of Oregon has ran a few projections from the site that MFL has, and he kind of compiled them to help us kind of set the stage of where teams might fall for the season. So things on the module that say projected CFFB rank is using those metrics and ranking them through how they finish with these projected scores. And he's actually anticipated to be a top 25 team by the end of the regular season. So he's supposed to get 10 wins, 3 losses against some pretty good teams. So we'll see what happens with him. He could definitely, just like last year, get hot at the end of the season and be right in the back of the same spot. So that's Marshall. It's worth dwelling on him. Back Another notable honorable mention is Michael Washington's Florida State team. They're out of the ACC Atlantic. It's notable because they ranked at 26th, tied for 26th in the coaches poll voting. He's got top 25 projections in a lot of categories, with his starters being in the top 20. He has an average to weak scheduling, where he's playing a lot of weak opponents, especially in non-conference, with teams against Penn State, Ball State, Ohio. So he makes up for that a little bit with his tougher division opponents, which are notable games. Week 7, which is his only projected loss, is against Clemson. Week 10 versus Wake Forest. Louisville in Week 11, and then finishing up the season at Week 13 versus North Carolina State. So I think, if we're being really honest, I don't think anyone's expecting Florida State to be super competitive. It seems like they could have an outside shot at winning the division if they do truly well go undefeated, but it's kind of a little bit of a soft scheduling that's helping them, I think, for a lot of these projections. So and I think Michael would say the same about his team. I think he's probably not expecting the most out of them, but he's got good players: Justin Jefferson, Cam Akers, Trevor Lawrence. I think yesterday a lot of people were a little skeptical on Cam Akers. He does have a few other players. He does have a great handcuff in Darrell Henderson for if Akers isn't performing this season. He's also got Elijah Mitchell, Damian Harris, that can kind of help flesh out that wide receiver room. So I don't know if you have any other comments about Florida State. Otherwise, we can keep trucking along here.
No, I mean, same deal. I have no idea. I don't pay attention more to what these teams do in the recruiting class. This is an awful. I mean, unless you got some upperclassmen, this is an absolutely awful freshman class. That's all I have to say about this. This team's not top 25 either. Does this say they're projected to be top 8 at the end of the year?
Yep, projected to be top 8, and I think a lot of it's because they get 12 wins and they have a somewhat average opponent all play. While it says 60, they're about at 50%. So when you add up their projected all play and opponent all play, they're getting a win multiplier of 1.28, which is pretty good. I mean, it's top 25, so it's really holding them above water. But I think they're probably overperforming. I mean, they're already projected to have a pretty weak depth piece. So if anything goes crazy, injury-wise, they could be definitely tumbling down the board.
Yeah, I don't see it holding up.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
All right. Like I mentioned, the other team that tied in the top 20 for top 26 in coaches poll was our own Taylor. Taylor out of Kent State. I think a lot of people yesterday felt very similar in that they think Taylor's probably one of the better, well-rounded, better-suited minor teams this season to make some noise. I think there's always in this format, especially for minor, there's fewer teams that are expected to be really good, and I think Taylor has the potential to be really good. He didn't do himself much favors this season, where he's got a really tough schedule. He's ranked for a top 21 toughest schedule this season, which is kind of unheard of when you have to factor in the minor usually has much weaker division play, where they're going up against teams like Ohio, Ball State, Toledo, Bowling Green. Those guys are pretty weak comparatively to the rest of the divisions, and they have to play them. So he made up for it in spades with his non-conference schedule, playing against NC State, Oklahoma State, Washington, and Ole Miss are all really good opponents. And then he's got three really important division conference games against Miami, Ohio in Week 6, Week 8 against Northern Illinois, and then surprisingly, he's projected to lose to you by the slimmest of margin, Lou, in Week 9, which I think would ultimately potentially swing the division out of Taylor's reach if he does well and truly lose, because you're not projected to be that good of a team this year comparatively. So
I don't think it's probably because of the bye week. I don't think I have any week buys. So he's got.
Yeah, I think he's got. Was it Week 9? Yeah, Herbert's in there, but he's missing Elijah Mitchell, Javonte Williams.
Running backs, yeah. So he doesn't have any running backs Week 9. Yeah,
so that's where you catch him, and he doesn't. I mean, depth is a challenge in minor to begin with, and I think he'll be harder pressed. But he's got Kenneth Walker. Maybe he'll fit in there if Kenneth is doing something by then, and maybe Gus Edwards has got a favorable week, but he's definitely a better position MAC team this season to make some noise. So I think he's got some high-end talent where, Justin Herbert could carry him a long way in conference play, and if he can, win a couple of these non-conference games and surprise people, he could be, I think, maybe have an outside shot at an at-large bid if he wins the division. So Taylor, I think, got a good team for a minor league team or minor conference team, especially.
Yeah, I think the Miners probably going to have an easier run at things. I mean, the teams that are in the top, third of minor, I think stand a much better chance. Last year, Miners seemed to have been like, maybe, what was it, Buffalo and
Fresno.
That's kind of like all the other teams that were grouped together in that second tier kind of split. A lot of them have fallen off, and even the top couple teams, even Buffalo, took a step back. So I think it's probably an easier schedule to run through this time. So any of the teams that are, the 2 or 3 teams in minor that are positioned themselves to do well this year will kind of put themselves in a spot to get an at-large bid, depending on how they play. I don't know what his schedule is. I guess you have it up here. I don't know how that schedule. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know how that schedule relates. I don't know if that's saying that the red or week 1, 3, and 4 are tough matchups or easy.
Those are projected to be losses. So
okay.
the red ones are projected to be losses. The greens are projected to be wins. Right now, he would have a record of 8-5 for 13 weeks, which is good to get him at 28th in the comparatively to the field by the end of the season. So his projection in the coaches poll mirrors, but I think he's got all the potential based on how his team is constructed, and if he swings a few of those games, given what his strength of schedule is, that he would shoot up the board much higher, probably up to 10 wins, 11 wins would get him up into the top 10 easily, I think, given his tougher schedule. So
yeah.
If he can swing a few, and then especially if he were to win the conference championship, that free win over other teams that would lose or something could really vault him higher. That's what got Buffalo into the playoffs last year. Same kind of pathway could be there for Taylor if he makes it work. So those are the honorable mentions. But moving in at 25th for the coaches poll this year is Matt. Matt's a first-year coach, and he's taken over Rutgers. People, if remember, Rutgers last year was a pretty light team. They didn't have a lot of players on their team, and Matt's taken over this first year and added a bunch of players and filled out his roster, which I'm thrilled to see. I think Matt's added a really great element to this Rutgers team. He participated, grabbed a few transfers in auction this year, and he's now projected in a lot of categories to be just right inside or just outside the top 25. I think his schedule-wise, he's got a really great blend of easy wins against Florida and maybe Cincinnati, Ohio, or Iowa, and then he's got some tough opponents in BYU. Utah State is going to be kind of tough, but Week 6 against Northwestern will be tough. Week 8 against Indiana is going to be a tough game. Michigan as well, and then even Navy. So he's got 6 or 7 opponents that are going to be pretty tough. He's projected to get 9 wins, be just inside the top 25 by the end of the regular season. His best players are mostly his wide receivers, but I think he's got a lot of depth where, Debo and Pittman are there, but he's also got Higgins, McLaurin. He's got, Elijah Moore there too. I think those are 8, 6, 7 guys that'll be able to buoy him for a lot of his roster, and then he's got a few running backs to put in there. So he got a lot of depth, not a lot of top-end talent outside of maybe Debo, but I think he's poised to be right there in the mix for the top 25 by the end of the season. I don't think he's maybe got really enough of a shot to win the division or anything, but he's definitely got a team that can be competitive.
The quarterback play is too weak. That's probably the difference, I would assume, when we start looking at. Again, I wasn't here yesterday, so I don't know, but I'm just going to assume that some of your top end teams, your top 5, 10 teams are going to have probably like your Jalen Hurts or your Kyler Murrays or whatever at quarterback play, and when you're comparing that, if this team had one of those quarterbacks, it's a much
Much
better
better.
team.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I mean about this team is now that I figured out you can expand the taxi squad so I can see all the players. I'm not really sure why Kenny Pickett's still active. Are You'll have to refresh my memory. Are teams able to move guys off of their taxi onto the active roster at some point in the season?
Yeah, they can, but it'll burn their red shirt for their freshman. So if
Right, but if
he
he's already on the active roster, he's getting burnt anyway. So at the very
correct,
least,
yeah,
the safest bet, and especially, and the only reason I say this again, you mentioned this was a new guy.
yep,
Um, so as a new guy, I mean, I don't know if you listen to this, but as a piece of advice, throw Pickett on the taxi squad because obviously you have him there because you think at some point maybe he plays this year. Um, leave him on there, and if he plays by week 3, and you're like, hey, I want Pickett over Jones, then you activate him week 3. If he doesn't play till week 8, and you're 3-5, and you're like, this season's a wash, keep him on the taxi, and you
yep,
don't burn the red shirt. But again, from a strategic standpoint, the best move there with Pickett is to toss him on the taxi squad with the rest of your guys, with the rest of your rookies, and then move them as needed. That way you can preserve the red shirt for as long as possible, and then gives you just a little bit more strategy.
yep. I agree, and there'll be a few other examples of that as we go through. But yep, that's Rutgers' first Big Ten team of the voting. But it's followed up by another Big Ten team. This is Chance at number 24 with Michigan. They were a team that made the Big Ten championship last year. Took a bit of a step down, obviously, but a lot of top 25s and top 30s and projections. It's got pretty good depth at the 17th deep team based on the Martin metric projection. They did receive one first place vote. I don't remember who voted for them. Maybe I can pull it up real quick. But Chance is a competitive guy. He's scheduled pretty tough. Actually, Jake gave him a first place vote. Whatever. So yeah, Jake voted for him first. Great job, Jake. I don't know if anyone else holds that agreement, but he's got a pretty good team. He's got Justin Herbert, Debo, top end guys. He's also got J.K. Dobbins, which I think yesterday a lot of the guys held the same kind of temperament as Akers, where they weren't sure how well of a top end player he's going to be. But he's also got A.J. Dillon as his other real stalwart at running back. He's got some pretty good depth at wide receiver with Hunter Renfrow. Michael Gallup will be coming back. He's got Nico Collins, Claypool, Ayuk. Even some really sneaky depth play for Marcus Valdes-Scantling, who he medical redshirt last year. So I think this team is probably pretty close to where it's projected to finish with a 32 ranking. He's got tough games against Week 4, Colorado. Week 6 against Ricky and Notre Dame. Week 8 against Navy is going to be tough. Rutgers in 10 is another top 25 opponent. And then Week 12 against Indiana are all supposed to be tough outs. And as you can see from the screen, a lot of those are projected to be losses this season. So not as good of a season projected-wise for Chance, but I think he'll be competitive nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good team. There's enough depth here. I think that's the biggest thing. At least at the wide receiver position. I kind of like how he managed that. It's a lot riding kind of on you said on J.K. Dobbins here, but even if you don't have Dobbins for the full season, he looked terrible by the way, limping around. So I'm not sure even if he does play right out the gate that he's worth starting. But you can piece together with A.J. Dillon, Darrell Henderson, even Alexander Madison. To piece together, what do we got to start 2 guys? So I mean,
you only have to start 1 running back.
Oh shit, yeah. So I mean, he can piece together and then just hope play for the home run threat on like a Claypool and a Gallup and Renfro trying to put up points, and I think he's fine. I think it's a pretty good team. And again, probably ends up higher than, where does this have him at, 32?
Yeah.
Simply just because Justin Herbert. I mean, there's going to be maybe 2-3 weeks where Justin Herbert's going to put up
Win 'em.
40 some points
Yeah.
and give him an easy win. And all that takes is to be on, week 6, 8, 9, 10, or 12 where you got him, as a projected loss, and that turns the season around. So I do kind of like this team. I like the direction. I think probably what keeps him lower in everybody's minds is the running back spot. Maybe if he had, one guy that didn't have a question mark, because I think all of these guys do have question marks and aren't like number one guys. I think it'd be a much higher team, but I do like it. It's definitely a top 25 at the end of the year type team. I think this is the first one where I've gone, okay, I can see this being top 25 at the end of the year.
Not even Taylor?
No, Taylor sucks. I'll beat Taylor. Taylor will get Taylor's all the way through whatever that is to week 9. Taylor Cinderella. I hope to God that he is 8-0 going into week 9, and I knock him off his high horse. I hope that's how it goes.
That'd be great. It'd be great content wise, but number 23, first Pac-12 team of this. It is BYU, Ben's team. Ben last year was devastated by injuries. If you look at his squad, he's actually got a ton of medicals that are coming back this year more exclusively. I think he's got Dobbins and Akers on his team. I think he's got a Gallup or a Judy or something like that. But which is reflective in a ton of his depth this year. He's projected to have the 4th deepest team. He's also somehow projected to have the second toughest team, or second toughest schedule this season, where he's playing a ton of teams. He also received 1 first place vote. I don't remember who voted for him. Let me double check here. Oh, that was Michael. Michael gave him 1 first place vote. So Florida State gave 1 first place vote to BYU here. Must like the depth. Overall, I think he's got tough games against Indiana, Wake Forest, Rutgers, Air Force. 4 of the first 5 games are against really tough opponents, but then he plays against Boise State, Washington, and then finishes the season up against Matt and Oregon. I think he's in for a really tough road. I think he's got some depth to fight and be competitive in maybe a few of these games, especially once bye weeks start happening. But right now he's projected only to get 7 wins, which is just bowl eligible. So we'll see if anything kind of goes wonky with him. But I think he'll have a tough time really competing. But overall, I think he's got a deep team, and it's maybe better suited for next season to be really, really competitive, if I can recall his team off the top of my head.
Yeah. His ranked number is missing from his team name, just in case you weren't aware.
Yeah, I haven't gotten
you
that.
plug all those in, so he's missing there. A lot of the other ones have it, but he's missing. I if I was to rank it, and again, I didn't put in a ranking for just lack of overall time to do anything in my fucking life, but the last team was better than this one. Again, a lot of the same pieces that we just talked about: Herbert, Dobbins. I think Renfro might have been on that list. I just there was more depth, better players on the previous, and again, you probably have bigger running back questions here because the 2 that he does have, Dobbins and Akers, are the 2 guys that we've kind of hit on already of being like massive question marks out the gate, and then stability long term for the season just between the 2. But a good solid team with honestly, the recruiting class. I mean, this is kind of the first one where I was like, oh, somebody that actually recruited with a purpose here. I kind of like that he went, it looks like, heavy on Kenneth Walker and then grabbed Brian Robinson. And I think that if the team maybe escapes, you see Kenneth Walker kind of come up and start some games. Just because it really is a team that's probably like 1 or 2 pieces away from being really good. So you can do it either way. Play it for next season or try to kind of push in with what you have on your taxi squad. But I think that it's one of those teams that's on the line there in terms of strategy. What do you do with what you got? And that's probably the first team that we've seen.
Yeah, I do still, now that I got to look at his team a bit more, I do really hold the belief that this is a team that's 1 year away from being much more competitive. I think once he gets Olave, Shakir, Walker, and Robinson kind of in the fold next year, that team isn't losing much in terms of seniors. I think they only really lose
Renfro.
Actually, I don't even know how they have Tim Jones on there. I gotta fix that. But everyone else is coming back, so I think this guy is. Oh, and he loses Jalen Guyton, which is no real loss, and Craig Reynolds. So he doesn't lose anything really substantial outside of Renfro this coming year. I think he's much better poised for being a team that's like going to be leading the division potentially next year with Herbert and some of those running backs. So that's number 23, BYU. Moving on to another Pac-12 team. This is actually in the South this time. Is Colorado. Colorado's coached by Russ. This is the first year Russ has been the coach. First year in the league for Russ, too. Again, another team that's projected to have a lot of depth. Number 3 in the country. Has a really tough slate of first 5 weeks for the season, but which really helps buoy his 35th ranked strength of schedule. You got week 1 against Marshall, who we've noted as being a pretty good team. Week 2 against Ole Miss is a pretty good team. Vanderbilt is a pretty average to good team with Joey, and he's projected to play, and he is playing him, but is projected to win. And Michigan, Washington's going to be a tough out. And then in the back half of the season, really the only other team that is projected to be pretty tough is going to be Air Force in week 9. So he's projected to win that game. That game I've emboldened and is noted as being a really potential pivotal game for the Pac-12 South. It's supposed to be one of the weaker division of the Pac-12, so that could be coming down to Colorado and Air Force that week. So Russ and his team is kind of projected to have a starting unit in the 30s and projected to finish in the 30s, so I think he's kind of in that general area. I think a lot of people voting-wise felt his depth was much more improved and kind of helped him in his roster. So that's Russ's team. I don't know if you have anything to add, Lou.
Yeah, I think probably the potential recruiting class also kind of bumps him up here. He's got Pierce that probably could start. I mean, if Pierce is going to log RB1 carries in Houston, Pickens looks like he's a real deal. Again, I don't even think he needs Pickens because of the wide receiver depth that he has. But plugging in someone like a Pierce and then maybe eventually rolling in a Pickens and a Jameson Williams, that it's a really solid squad. But I mean, I don't know. There's not. It's another team that's probably just like what I just. That's got a decision to make whether they want to stash these rookies or if they're going to burn them now. And this team certainly isn't in as good of a shape next year as BYU was, but again, I don't know if there's enough here to be like, oh yeah, this team, we're looking at like a top 10 finishing team here, just because there are so many holes. So it'll be an interesting, especially for a new guy, to see kind of how he navigates week in and week out here to try to get at least. I mean, it's at least a bowl game team. I think it's probably 8-9. I don't know what you said, but it's a pretty solid team. I just don't. For me, we're still missing the teams that kind of have the solid quarterback, the really good depth at wide receiver, and have that stud running back. So we haven't seen that yet. I think that's where teams like this will run into problems when they hit a team that's just an absolute buzzsaw.
Yeah, and I think like it's noted in his schedule, the first part of the season is going to be the tough part. It's going to be the tough sledding. Like he's projected to start the season, the first 7 weeks, 2-5, and by then you're kind of am I going to burn a red shirt? And probably, if I was playing, be a little skittish at doing that on a 2-5 team. So he can make up for it on the back end and be competitive, and might look like a team that comes on hot in the back end of the season for sure. But it'll be interesting to see if he's willing to pull the trigger on some of those freshmen. I probably wouldn't. If he listens to this, I'd probably at least make sure that you're putting those wide receivers, especially Pickens and Williams on your taxi.
Well, Williams 100% needs to go on there with missing the
Yeah, absolutely.
however
Missing
many
like
games. He 100% needs to go on there. Yeah. The other guys, it is what it is, but this is, again, a new guy that I'm sure we'll either learn the lesson or figure out kind of how the taxi squad works, because at least it's somebody that threw some guys on there. Ty Chandler and Kyron Williams are on there, but in reality, again, guys, put them all on taxi, then work backwards. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, and kind of speaking on, and it's kind of interesting that the next team we talk about is the team that the coach who previously had Colorado, so last year was coached by Jeff. He moved to Louisville this year, so this is his first year, and left Russ with the situation he's in, which is pretty nice of him. But Jeff's team is projected to be kind of middle of the pack, not a lot of average depth. I kind of labeled it as a little bit of a glass cannon light, where his starting roster is supposed to be in the top 25, but his depth is a little bit average. He also has some tough division to play in. He's got Wake Forest and North Carolina State and Florida State and Clemson, who are all supposed to be tough outs this year, and those are kind of the wins that he's expected to lose. So I think Louisville and Jeff are in for kind of a projected to just get whatever bowl game they can, and if they can finish in the top 25, I think that's a really good season for him. I think right now he's projected to finish just outside at 29th. So Jeff's team is poised to look pretty good. I think right now is his top. He's got an interesting stack where he's, I think, got both Najee and Jonathan Taylor, which is very rare in this format and for teams. So I think he could have a much higher ceiling if he can do it, but I think some of the depth pieces, as we mentioned, are a little bit lacking, where he doesn't have as nearly as good of wide receivers as the last few teams, but his running backs are much better.
Yeah, and then the quarterback play, obviously.
Yeah, a little suspect.
But I mean, I think Fields is going to be serviceable. I don't think he's going to be terrible. It's one of those teams, like, everything has to go right. If everything goes right, this is going to be a team. And you've got shit. Like you said, you've probably got 20 points a week from both Harris and Taylor. I mean, that puts him at 40. Gets 15 from Fields. He's already at 55, and then he's got how many do we start?
You can start up. Yeah, you start 8 total, so you'd be having like.
So he's got another 5. So he's got another 5 guys, and AJ Brown, Metcalf, Renfro, probably Tooney and Pollard. I mean, that's a pretty good group there.
The only unfortunate thing,
he's putting up 100 points a week.
Yeah, he should be scoring a pretty good clip. But I think the unfortunate thing is, if everything does go right, he is poised for a Week 14 matchup in the conference championship.
Yes, I saw
Fields
that.
and Taylor,
Yes.
And that's pretty awful.
Right, and that's an issue, obviously. And again, it could be a team too that, I mean, looking at it, this is kind of the reverse of what you just hit on. Through week 6 here, you're looking at a team that's potentially 5-1, and even that game against Kentucky is projected to be super close. So I mean, if this is a 6-0 team come week 7, when the bye weeks start kind of to hit, maybe you see a Sky Moore.
Olave.
He had somebody else. I don't know. Yeah, Olave. Those are probably the only 2 that are on there that are worth anything. So maybe those 2 come off. And I'm sure that Jeff's aware of that from being in the league last year. So I think that's probably the strategy, is to, hey, let's see how it goes. Again, the only issue is this is a team that's, you're talking about, if you don't make the move this year, you're losing Pollard, losing A.J. Brown, losing Metcalf, Renfro, Fant.
And he might be losing Taylor for early declare, because he's already won an award last year and probably would win an award this year. And
right, so it's probably a mass exodus, push all in. So it's probably not a wait until week 6 and find out. It's probably like after week 1, if Sky Moore and Olave are being used get them up to the big leagues and try to win something. But what do I know?
All right. We'll actually skip 20 because two teams tied at 19 this year, and the first one up is the only minor team that made the top 25, and that is UNLV. UNLV is coached by Steve. They're the epitome of what a glass cannon is in this league. They have the starters ranked in the top 25 for a starting lineup, but all the depth is gone. And he also is projected to have a incredibly light schedule this year, where he's playing, I think, maybe one real notable game against a team. I made a note for him that he probably should have taken more initiative to schedule a tougher opponent for weeks 3 and 4. Baylor and Charlotte are projected to be just absolutely awful. So while the win is great, it's probably going to do him more harm than good. He could at least have scheduled an average opponent at best, and it would have probably helped his all-play and ranking much better than what it's projected to do. In terms of his division schedule, though, the really one worth noting is Fresno State, Utah State, and potentially Wyoming. Those could, right now he's projected to lose 2 of those games, which are just devastating for his chances at the conference championship, especially being a team that's supposed to be so good. But this is where a lot of that depth not being there is probably the hindrance in stopping him. I think week 7 against Fresno State, he doesn't have Jalen Hurts and no backup quarterback. So, I mean, he's bound to lose those games. I think right now he's got to push all in. His team is constructed of juniors and seniors, and he's got to make the move now. So we'll see how well this team does. I think he really should have taken a little bit more of advantage of the scheduling, and especially weeks 3 and 4, and put himself in a better position, because he could have coasted through Mountain West to a conference championship and a really decent shot at a at-large bid in the playoffs. But I think right now it's a little too far out of reach.
Yeah, I'm not sure this team should be this high. Interesting. I mean, obviously, when we talked about this, I mean, the teams that are at the top of this, and UNLV is made some moves, but there are a couple other teams that, I mean, Taylor's team's better. At least I
think so too.
Taylor team's better in the minors. Taylor should be ranked higher. There's some other teams like,
I think Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, I think Central Michigan is okay. Northern Illinois is okay. I didn't check back in on even a Buffalo, like, and they lost a lot, but Buffalo is still. Yeah, you're talking Daniel Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Gibson, D'Ernest Johnson, James Robinson, who's going to have a role, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, C.D. Lamb, Jacoby Myers. Why he has Henry Ruggs still is beyond me, but then Quez Watkins, Garrett Wilson. I don't know who else he had here. Oh, hi. Just the upside of a Buffalo is probably better than throwing. I don't even know who we're talking about. I forgot. UNLV. UNLV up in there. Again, it's a good side. I mean, Jefferson, Metcalf, Pittman, Hurts.
Smith.
I mean, it's good, but I mean, there's so much crap in here to filter through that it's kind of hard to be like, okay, here's where the team. It seems like it's a feast or famine.
And if I remember, was he one of the? I know he was a big participant in upperclassmen. I think he grabbed a few of like Hawaii's fire sale players, but I don't remember. Was he also a heavy? I think he was trying really hard for like Brees, wasn't he?
I can't remember, to be honest. I don't want to say he was. I don't think that was right. I think he went too far on some of the other guys. Like I think it was Metcalf.
He spent too much on somebody else. Okay. Yeah,
but he went crazy on that, and threw him off to where I was like, really, this is what.
51 for Metcalf is pretty a lot.
So he went high, and there was somebody else got. I think that was a stupid high copy as well. So
he spent 80. He spent 80 on AJ Dillon and 50 for DK, which just evaporated all his money. So yeah. I remember that now. But it's he went all in. It's a team that's all in. We'll see what happens. I have my questions. I definitely think the scheduling did not help him when you're trying to go all in. So we'll see what happens with UNLV, top-rated minor team this year.
He'll get wins. Don't get me wrong, but he's gonna probably similar to like a Toledo last year who got wins but didn't schedule correctly or didn't manage correctly. And you'll see what kind of happens. You'll get that fall off. I mean, you see Toledo took a step back. And again, this team's not going to be in as bad of a shape, but you potentially have, again, a lot of these same names. Metcalf is out. I'm trying to think of who else I saw on that roster that was just like, okay. But there's just not enough for it to make sense to go all in. So I'm not sure. We'll see. I think maybe the idea was hey, ETN, that you're gonna have healthy guys. Not really sure either one's healthy. So that kind of backfired. But we'll see. I mean, it's a good. I mean, it's good, but to go okay, this team is a for sure top 25 when every single other top third minor team is probably looking pretty damn similar to that team. It's just odd.
Yeah. Like we mentioned, the other team that tied for 19th is this is going to be a repeating theme, so buckle in, is Big 12 South, TCU. Really good projections across the board and top 25 in a lot of categories. Is got an average strength of schedule, but notable that he plays in the Big 12 South, and that is right now projected to be just an absolute fucking bloodbath. Notably, he's supposed to start the year 8-0, so we could see some interesting decisions being made in terms of burning red shirts or something like that from TCU. He's got a lot of tough games, like I mentioned, and most of them are all in division. Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, SMU, Texas, and Houston, all in a 5-week period, are projected to be some of his toughest opponents. So Lee and his team has got a lot of work, got a lot of tough competition. His team has got, Burrow, Debo, CeeDee Lamb as his top players, and I think he's got pretty good depth with like Chark and Bateman, missing a few other wide receiver positions. But like we said, if he's starting at 8-0, we can maybe see a Drake London come out of the woodwork, or a Tyquan Thornton if he's playing well. So we'll see. I think this team is going to be in for a fight, and I'm truly scared to see how much everyone in the Big 12 South bloodies each other up, and how much that hurts their rankings.
Yeah, I don't know where this has it with 16. I don't know if I see it as a top 20. I mean, it's tough. There are good pieces here. Again, it's not like I'm not a top 5, top 10 roster yet. So it is what it is. I do like some of the other pieces that are stashed on the taxi squad. So I think they built really well. And then, again, barring, I don't know much about who's potential to graduate early, but you're just talking about losing Damian Harris and Deebo Samuel and adding some pieces. I think it'll be, if it's not this year, I think it'll be a pretty good team next year as well for TCU.
Yeah, I think he could maybe lose CD, but we'll see. There's so many good teams in the Big 12 South that it's kind of a toss-up who gets a conference award. I don't think he'll be good enough to make a national award, so I think most of his players will be in the mix, and as long as like a CD stays off that list, he'll be in a good situation that he isn't looking too bad next year. So that is number 19. staying in the Big 12 South, we are going to move further down the state to Texas. Texas is supposed to be a really, really well-rounded team, top 20 in a lot of projected areas. They're supposed to be having an incredibly tough schedule in the top 10 at number 9 in the country. They maybe should have scheduled, in giving that consideration, maybe should have scheduled a little lighter in their non-conference and cross-conference games, because it probably would have given them just a few more wins and maybe helped them out in the large scheme of things. But they play teams like Texas A&M week 2, week 5 against Marshall. Then they got SMU, Texas Tech, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Houston are all really tough teams. And he's got to play all of them. And I think the other teams that he filled in are no slouches either. I think most of them are like average to good teams that he plays against. So we'll see what Texas does. He's got a lot of tough teams to play. I think roster-wise, he's got Justin Herbert, so really anything's on the agenda in terms of what his ceiling is. And he's got, backup quarterback, which is pretty helpful. Running back-wise is a little scary. It's a lot of depth players. His wide receiver area is much better suited for helping his team out with Amon-Ra, Hunter, Pittman, McLaurin, Claypool, Marquise Brown as well. I'm kind of surprised Dameon Pierce is sitting on his taxi at the moment, given that he's a starter and probably would help his team.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to make the same. Again, if you're only starting one running back, you want to make sure you get a guy that's at least being a 1. So maybe, I don't know. I have not been following enough to know what's going on. If it's Michael Carter and Breece Hall splitting or Breece Hall completely. But I would think maybe it's Damian Harris is who he's going to start at running back week 1, start all the wide receivers, start Herbert, roll with it, and kind of see how it goes. And if Pierce outperforms Carter or Harris week 1, then I think we would see Dameon Pierce kind of get updated immediately. It's probably just that initial I got to see it before I believe it thing, and so I would imagine within a week or two that Pierce is promoted if he's legitimately the starting running back in Houston, and then this team is pretty solid. I mean, I actually this is probably the best all around 1 through 8 team that I think that we've come across so far. Again, running back position is weak, but the wide receivers are so damn solid that whatever, you don't get the running back right one week, it's not going to kill you. If you get it right most weeks, yeah, you're going to be enough to slip by. So I really kind of like what he's got there, and even if even if you wanted to add to it, you're talking about bringing up another team that could bring up Drake London if he gets involved, or again a Tyquan Thornton, just to add to that wide receiver group. So I think it's probably a team to start, week in and week out. What is that? 6 wide receivers. Yeah, whatever it is. So I think it'll be a pretty impressive Texas. I don't know who owned that, but good work.
Yeah, that's John. He's been in the format forever. But moving on to 17, that is North Carolina. This is maybe in running for the horniest member of the league. Maybe, I don't know if him or Wes take the mantle, but they're in close competition for the horniest member of the league. And they're definitely both in the ACC. But North Carolina is the highest voted ACC Coastal team, and it's by a wide margin. I think they are probably one of the epitomes of glass cannons, where they have a top 25 projected starting lineup, but a bottom 25 projection in depth. Their schedule is incredibly light. It's the 5th easiest schedule in the league, which their only real notable game, in my opinion, is Week 6 versus Florida State, which is really only their projected loss. So this team maybe could have scheduled a bit harder, swap out Toledo, put in an average team at best, maybe do a bit more where they take out Minnesota too, and it might help their strength of schedule where if they do falter in the ACC title game, if they make it there, then they maybe have still that outside chance at an at-large bid. I think Matt's team in general, another Herbert copy, but they also got David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift, which I think will be a huge helps for his team. And he's got some wide receivers as well: Mooney, Moore, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase. 4 or 5 guys that are okay. It'll be interesting to see if he decides week 8 against Virginia Tech. He could probably roll the dice and not try to start Pickett or something that week and just roll it against that since Virginia Tech's so weak. But running backs could use a little help, but beyond that, I think it's a pretty solid team. Like we said, depth is going to be definitely a challenge.
I agree. Even the depth, though, if you can start a Quez Watkins or a Nick Westbrook or even a Quintez Cephas, just somebody that, hey, they don't need to do it every single week, but if you can guess the right one out of those and plug them into your lineup, and even a Juwan Jennings was useful down the stretch last year. So, if you can plug and play the right, you're going to obviously play Herbert, Montgomery, Swift, Chase, Mooney, Moore, Waddle. That's probably your starting group. And then to be like, okay, you got to plug in, what was that, 3 left, 2 left, something like that. It's obviously not coming from the running back position, so it's going to have to come.
He could burn, if he really wanted to, if he's hurting. I don't know if his schedule really means he's got to hurt for it, but he's got Pickens sitting on his taxi right now. If push comes to shove, needs those extra points, Pickens could be the one burn I see on that squad, and maybe even Pacheco being a bolster to his roster if the Chiefs running back room really turns topsy-turvy. But I think, again, like we said, this is a pretty glass cannon team. Anything outside those starting 7 players is kind of iffy. So, and I think even Matt yesterday said he wishes he did interject on the pod. And he did say he wishes he had taken more of a look at his non-conference schedule and even some of his cross-conference opponents and try to factor that in and help him. But he's projected to have a pretty good season and be competitive, so kind of hard to ask. Moving to 16, we are going back to the Big 12 South with Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State last year actually made the Big 12 championship and lost to Marshall. This is Matt's team and is another supposed to be well-rounded team. They play a ton of tough games. They're projected to have the 5th hardest schedule once it's finished loading here. You can hopefully see that. But they're expected to play, their top 20 in almost all their projections, top 5 toughest schedule, 7 games against top 25 coaches polls teams. Air Force, Kent State is on there as well. Indiana, Marshall again, TCU, Houston, Texas Tech, all those teams are tough outs, and he's got them almost every other week. So even though he's ranked this high, he's only projected to win 7 games, which is just making him bowl eligible, and he's supposed to be finishing in the 30s. So I think his ceiling is pretty high comparatively. I think he's got pretty good quarterback play. I think he's got a lot of depth, which shows in his projections for it. He's got running backs. Dylan, Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, James Robinson will be helpful. His wide receivers, Debo and Renfro and McLaurin, and he's got good sneaky starts of potentially Van Jefferson and Hardman in there as well. I think this team is suited to be a potential surprise team, just like they were last year. We'll see what their quarterback play is. They're not top-end starters right now, but they very well could be, like a Lance or something. But I like this team. I think it's got a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, I mean, even the way they approach their auction, looks like depth was kind of the priority there. I would have liked to do like a top end Brees Hall because I think that's really all that this team's missing is.
Well, he actually spent a ton on Dameon Pierce. He had to put like $80, which was the highest copy by far, and I think he's got a lot of faith in the chat, which he's mentioned before, in Pierce. So a little surprising to see him on the
Get his ass
taxi.
off a taxi squad, for Christ's sake.
He could be a value, so we'll see what happens.
Put the money where the mouth is and get Pierce in the starting lineup week 1. But no, I mean, I like the team. You're not going to get blown away by any really at the quarterback or running back position. He's not going to have to worry about bye weeks.
Mm-hmm.
One of those guys probably ends up outplaying the other, so I'm sure he's going to have it figured out. Running backs, Dylan Jacobs, Mitchell, I mean, even Robinson can be worth something. So I like that. Gabe Davis is good. Jefferson, McLaurin, Renfro, Debo. I just kind of like that. It sits with me as probably a team that I know the projection says outside the top 25, but I think that it's a team that probably.
I think if he didn't have such a tough schedule, he'd be much, much higher. But if he does win a lot of these games, he's going to be right up there.
I mean, the team's good, so I think it's a team that can do really well. I just would have liked to seen it. Again, I know that you said he played a lot for Dameon Pierce. I would have liked to see this team push a little bit more. Now they don't have a spectacular QB play, and they wouldn't have gotten that in this auction. But you're losing. This is a team that's losing Josh Jacobs, Madison, Guyton, Hardman, McLaurin, Renfro, Samuel, like mass exodus next year. So I would have liked to see maybe a more of a better approach in terms of the recruit class. He went after, I just made the comment and pulled up the taxi squad and see that he, about the quarterbacks and see that he spent on a quarterback when he already has 2 quarterbacks for the next 3 years, 4 years actually, because he redshirted Trey Lance. So that's just kind of just the odd use of money. I would have gone after like I said, a Breece Hall or somebody, one of the rookies that would have impacted almost immediately, just to kind of add to this very much so win now team.
Yeah. Moving on is to a team that we got some vehement criticism for getting onto the top 25. It's the reigning SEC champion, Ethan, and the Tennessee Volunteers. They are actually the highest rated and only rated SEC East team in the top 25. Ethan's team is, I think, really, again, projected to have a really strong starting lineup. They got players like Burrow, Akers, Jonathan Taylor, which is a pretty soft running back room, but his wide receivers are Ayuk, Gabe Davis, Terry McLaurin, Hunter Renfro. I think personally that the ground is made up when you compare him to like an Oklahoma State team where Burrow and Jonathan Taylor are just assumed to be so much better than the other components of that roster. So the other thing to notice, he's got kind of a pretty light schedule where he's ranked almost the 70th toughest schedule in the country. Joey didn't like this team. He put up a good fight to say that he doesn't understand why people would like this team. I think a lot of it has to do with probably Jonathan Taylor being one of the best assets in this format. In terms of tough games, his only real tough notable game is Texas Tech Week 4 and maybe Week 1 against Washington. But beyond that, SEC is going to be kind of a very average to weaker conference play for Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a super weak schedule. I don't know. I just don't see out of this team. I very, 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 very rarely agree with anything that comes out of Joey's mouth. Just on legitimacy first, and then just moral duty second to not agree with Joey. But I probably agree that this team does not deserve to be a top 15 team. Don't get me wrong; they're again nice pieces. But there's just not enough to be like, oh yeah, like this is definitely like, if you're talking about relying on like KJ Osborne, Marcus Callaway's, and those type of guys. I mean, McCole Hardman, Gabe Davis. I mean, I love Hardman and I love Davis. But to be like, hey, those guys aren't going to be 7 and 8 guys. They're going to be his like 4 and 5 guys, because he's really only got Burrow, Taylor, Renfro, McLaren. I mean, those are his 4 solids, and then from there it's just kind of whatever else sticks. And so to be able to try to get 4 things to stick every single week, I don't know if I see it. But again, I also just kind of scrolling through some of these other SEC teams. There aren't that many that are much better. So even Joey, I was looking, I was like, okay, Joey's got him pretty matched up. Quarterback matches up pretty decently at running back. Joey's got a couple, Jefferson, Pittman, Devonta Smith, but then after that, Joey's just got a pile of shit, and then that's just kind of what some of these other teams have is. So I'm not really quite sure where all the talent is in the SEC. Again, this is probably where unless the SEC is just that bad and the schedule plays out this way, I just don't see it being a team that is in the top half of the league. Maybe they run the gauntlet in the SEC, but they'd probably get steamrolled by whatever team they get matched up with come playoffs or come SEC championship time.
Yeah. I think there's a greater sentiment. We were talking about this in the Big Ten today, is how there's this need to have some real good disparity between teams, and I think the SEC is a great example where a lot of teams are all very average, and so that doesn't necessarily hurt them when it comes to division or conference play too much. But when you start stacking them against the other teams where there was a little more disparity, where some of these teams are really good in the conference and really bad in the conference, and some of that talent is able to stratify, they're able to kind of percolate up further up the rankings and be more of a national contender, whereas Tennessee is a really strong contender, I think, in the SEC, especially in the SEC East, where they're projected to walk through the entire conference schedule for them. I mean, right now, not projected to lose a game, and I think their closest game is where they are only supposed to win by 4 points, but everything else is 10 points or more. So, that's substantial when you think about it, when just the teams that they play aren't really that hard. And if he doesn't win the conference championship against the other SEC team, he could be in just a little bit of rougher water. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think right now Joey has a lot of disdain for Ethan in general, and maybe has some personal bias towards how they conduct themselves in the SEC chat. But yeah, that's Tennessee, top-rated SEC East team. We'll move on to another ACC Atlantic team in Wake Forest. This is first-year coach and Max. They're another well-rounded team, as we kind of keep seeing in a trend. They're projected to have really good depth, number 2 rated depth team in the country per the Martin metric. They have a tough division schedule again. They also play 6 games against top 25 coaches polls teams. They've got Houston, BYU, Navy, Louisville, North Carolina State. Florida State's another good team, and Clemson are all supposed to be tough outs, and he's projected to lose most of them. So he's going to have a tough grind, but if he can flip some of those games, I think he's suited to be a team that surprises. His roster, he's got Burrow and Murray, which are probably one of the 2 best stacks you can have in the league at quarterback for this season. His running backs are ETN. He looks like he's going to play Brees from the start. He's got Najee Harris, Devin Singletary, which I think is going to be a pretty good depth piece to play when bye weeks come around. Wide receivers, Marquise Brown, Higgins, Judy are kind of the things that hold down his fort. So he doesn't really have the wide receivers that we've seen at some of these teams. Chark and Campbell could be surprise fill in week to week, but I think the team is well suited to make some noise if necessary as the season goes on.
This team's so damn close. I mean, this was kind of the first. Wait a second. Probably could have used the extra dollars. I mean, even if it was a couple, transferring one of those quarterbacks, Murray or Burrow. You don't need both. But I mean, it's a luxury that I don't think it's worth 1 week of. Because then this might be one of the better running back just kind of duo trios that we've come across. I think maybe that one that was
I think
somebody
Louisville
had,
currently, was.
yeah, Taylor and somebody else. I can't remember. But to get ETN, Hall, Harris, I mean, it's pretty nice. With one of those quarterbacks, that's your 4 guys. Brown is 5th, Higgins 6, Judy 7, and Dawson Knox 8. It kind of reminds me of, I believe it was Buffalo out of the starting Dawson Knox. I could be completely fucking wrong, but I thought there was somebody that I was like, what the fuck with the goddamn tight ends. So just to sneak Dawson Knox in there. I think it's a solid 8, but again, after the 8, you're getting relying on Devin Duvernay, Jessica Chenault, who I like, but I just don't think any NFL teams actually like him. It's just kind of tough because there's nothing else to lean on, even out of the rookie class, unless I guess it's. I mean, we've said this name 3 times already. Yeah. Thornton kind of steps up.
Thornton or Dobbs, I think, is probably his only real option.
Yeah, because I think he's going to need it to put himself over the top. But I really do I like this team a little bit. And then you're not losing. It doesn't look like he's losing. Kyler quarterback situation, which I think was mismanaged. I really just kind of got to replace a Marquise Brown and a Dawson Knox next year. I think it's actually probably a pretty good team. It's the depth, the initial depth there. I mean, you're talking Atwell, Bowden, Campbell, Tylan Wallace, McKitty. Like that's just trash. I think you probably could have dropped all those guys and found some misused players that are just sitting there that you could have probably filled in that would have been better. But I don't know. I do kind of really. I was like, oh, okay. So we got the quarterback play, we got the running back play. I just wish that there was. It doesn't even have to be good wide receiver. It's got to be something other than guys that are scoring 9, 5, 15 points on the season. Like, give me somebody that's scoring like 88 to 100 points. I'll take 2 or 3 of those at the back end of my starting lineup with kind of the quarterback and running back play that this team has.
Yeah, I think so. I think next year will be pretty interesting. I think he maybe didn't retool enough because I think he put a lot of money into Brees this year. And I don't know if he spent it all. He might not have spent it all, which is unfortunate. But next year he'll be probably in the very same tier that he is now. But I think right now he's poised to be a team that if something goes off, he could make some noise. But right now he's projected, I think, to finish in like 3rd or 4th in the division, which is unfortunate. Number 13 is the highest ranked Pac-12 South team. So like we've mentioned, Pac-12 South is projected to be a bit light, so this is the top voted Pac-12 South team, and that is Air Force. They're got a almost top 10 starting lineup, but a little bit light on the depth where they're almost ranked in the bottom quarter. They have a brutal non-conference schedule, which could help them with at-large bids if they were able to flip some of these results, where they play Oklahoma State, Clemson, Indiana, Notre Dame, and then they start the conference play against BYU. Their only real notable division game, as we mentioned with Colorado, is that Week 9 matchup. I think that's going to play a heavy outcome to what happens with this division is how that Week 9 game finishes out between Russ and Colorado. So Air Force, I think they got Burrow, Lamb, Javonte as their top players. I think they also, running back wise, is a little light with just Stevenson and Pollard as their backup, but
he's got Breece Hall sitting on a taxi.
Yeah, so he might be playing the long game. I don't know why he'd be waiting when he's got this tough of a non-conference schedule. Maybe he's just hoping for something to change, but his wide receivers, Lamb, Mooney, Elijah Moore, Amon-Ra, Waddle, that's like 4 or 5, and he's got Bateman as well. That's like 6 pretty good wide receivers to have this year. So
yeah, I like this team a lot. I probably would have them. This is where we're starting to make like a clear cut at the end of the year, these are your top 25. I like this roster just initially looking at it. I mean, I'm counting 10 solid guys. But then and I don't even think I counted Bateman, to be honest. I like Burrow. I like Williams. I like Pollard. I think you like Pollard as well. In the format. CD Lamb, Mooney, Amon-Ra, Waddle. Who did I miss? Brees Hall.
Yeah, Brees if he activates him.
And then, they're talking about Stevenson up in New England potentially taking on a bigger role, and that puts you 9-10 guys. And I think I skipped Bateman again, and I started with saying that I skipped Bateman the first time I did this. I kind of like it. I mean, it's not like superstar stud, but this is a really good team. And it's another team that's not missing anything if he loses Tony Pollard. So this is a team that next year is also going to be very, very good. Probably, I mean, if they're sitting at 13 this year, I mean, I would imagine this probably ends up being a top 5, top 10 team next year. This time next.
Yeah, it very well could be.
It's a really solid team.
Yeah, that's 13. Moving on to 12 is SMU, another Big 12 South team, as always. Top 20 in most projections, has a pretty good depth lineup as a projected top 10. Has 6 games against top 25 opponents, and I'm not even going to recant them because it's getting to be old. But the only other notable game that they have is week 2 against Navy is going to be tough. He's got a pretty good team. I think when we talked with Andy, who is his friends with him, he mentioned that SMU kind of wished he approached the auction a little bit differently and was a little more aggressive in some spaces, because he's definitely a win now team with Murray, Antonio Gibson. He bought Hall this year to kind of pair with David Montgomery. He's got Chase, AJ Brown, and he's already planning to play like Sky Moore and stuff like that. So I think he's ready to go in. I think he's ready to compete in the Big 12 South. We'll see what happens. He's also got Tony Pollard as well. So I think his team is pretty well suited. We'll see what he gets out of Brees and Gibson and the like. But he's got the top-end quarterback. He's got a depth piece in quarterback with Zach Wilson. And then I think his wide receivers are good enough.
Yeah. Hello. I didn't know. I thought you sounded like you
just stopped.
I was like, did he just fucking hang up? I was like, if his goddamn audio
just stopped, I'm
fucking done, because it sounded like you were just done. No, I like this team too. It's an odd kind of. Again, I'm not sure there's a team that's going to be there. I mean, it's got more star power. So I mean, if you get an AJ Brown that gets a better he had last year, I think that definitely helps. But just kind of hit on what you said. I don't know. I mean, if he spent money, I mean, I don't know how much you could change the auction. He got Brees Hall, top running back.
Yeah, and he spent a lot.
He got Sky Moore. I mean, I don't know what else he would have wanted to do. I don't know how else you better yourself for the start of this season and then kind of what he did. I mean, the only thing that you really can say is, hey, whatever you spent on Tyler Batty, P. Strong, Justin Ross, and Greg Dolis, whatever the fuck his name is, combine that all and put it on one player. But I don't even know if that amounts to anything. That might be like $10. I don't know. I don't even know if it's that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit down and click on it and look. So, I mean, in terms of, hey, I'm trying to win now, I don't think it gets much better than the auction haul that he got. I just don't think it's enough. I think that's probably the thing there is the want to do more to better this team, because it is a good team. But in terms of putting it over the edge, I think that it needs another piece.
You think so? I think this is pretty similar to Air Force.
Yeah, but even one.
I think his running backs are maybe just a slight tad
4,
better.
5, Yeah, no, you're probably right. I would keep looking at, like, I see the Quez Watkins on here. If we're counting on those guys, like, I don't. Whereas an Air Force didn't really have that. Uh,
Well,
what the fuck was that?
that was Wes. Fucking Wes.
The name is Greg Dulich there, Luis Wick.
Listen,
6634.
you missed your cue probably a half hour ago. We were talking about the horny people. You mute up and listen.
Oh, okay. I was take care of family obligations earlier.
Learn something. No, that's all right. I don't know what the hell you yelled, if that was a sneeze or what.
That was my hiccup.
Okay, that was great. I could have muted for that. But yeah, no, I mean, SMU is good. I think it's again, it's a top 25 team, but I don't think it like, if I was looking at this team and go, okay, hey, for next season, that's probably why I like Air Force better. Is because I think for next season, Air Force is a better team. Next season, I don't think SMU. I think SMU takes.
Oh yeah, you're probably right. I think it'll take a drop off next year.
Backwards, and that's probably why I'm not as crazy about it as I am Air Force.
Okay, makes sense. Moving on to 11. We'll spend a little time on him because he can toot his own horn in chat, but it's not Wes. Wes did not make the top 25. It's number 11 is Oregon. It is Matt, the author of the Martin Metric. Projected to be one of the tougher teams in the Pac-12, especially in the North. Top 10, top 20 in almost all the projections. Received one first place vote. Let me see if I can figure out who that was. But yeah, Matt's got a pretty good team, I think. His first place vote came from Colin of Miami, Ohio. I think Colin had voted all bird mascot teams, so I don't know how much we hold weight. If anything, we can just say Matt's the best bird team in the league this year, or projected to be. He's Matt did talk a little bit about his scheduling. He took a very pragmatic approach. I think he's just outside the 20, just inside the top 20 for toughest schedule. But when it came to non-conference schedule, he knew he played a really tough division with like Boise and Washington, and took advantage of scheduling a little mix of everything. Where he's got a Joey, he's got to play Miami, Ohio. He put a hard opponent like Ricky and Notre Dame, but he also then for cross-conference scheduled 2 cupcakes to get some easy conference wins, which I thought was just incredibly smart. And I think Matt's supposed to have a pretty good team this year as well. I think he's got Burrow, he's got Swift, Jacobs is a decent depth piece at running back. I think wide receiver wise, he's got Higgins, Marquise Brown, AJ Brown, Gallup. So his team's pretty much all in this season, I think, when you compare to like some other teams, like even Air Force. This team's more all in for this season. So we'll see how that works out for him, but I think it's a pretty good team.
Yeah, no, I like it. Again,
Elijah Mitchell too. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, there's Elijah Mitchell's in there, and even Damian Harris can be useful. It's nerve wracking because he plays for New England. I like Van Jefferson as well.
Freiermuth's a good depth piece.
Yeah, Freiermuth's a good piece. I mean, there's enough pieces here that it's good. I think again, I probably would just like. Oh, he got Garrett Wilson. I was like, I would have liked to see like get a stud, get something out of the top end of the. Breece Hall just gives me who comes to my mind, but like a Breece Hall or a Garrett Wilson, or
he's got Jahan Dotson and Rashad White, which could be really sneaky good teams that help our players that help his team. I think he talked about yesterday that if push comes to shove and he needs that extra oomph by the time he gets around to week 8 when he plays Boise, he said he might look at burning that Wilson red shirt. But he doesn't really feel the need to do that until probably he's looking at how the division and stuff are stacking up around week 8, because I think that'll be his penultimate important game is that week 8 game against Boise this year.
Right. So I mean, I think definitely is a solid team. I like it. I mean, even the Zach Moss are valuable. maybe not so much this year because I guess Zach Moss is running back 3 there. I mean, with Cook, whoever the fuck, Singletary and Moss. I don't know, but guys like that just seem to bring kind of value. I think he has Gallup too. I don't know if you mentioned that, but definitely a team that it probably takes a couple of weeks, I would think, to figure out what that starting lineup is every single week, just because there is a good bit of depth here, and not knowing who's going to pop off or what team plays well or who gets hurt. She gets into that groove. It'll probably sure up what that starting lineup is, and once he gets it, I mean, it's definitely probably 100. I don't know, 100, 105 points each week would be my guess, easily. And then that's the projection, and then obviously guys outscored projections, so I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't a team that's scoring 120 points each week.
Yeah.
I tried to give Matthew a pretty easy out-of-conference matchup, but he did not want to take part in the playing the insects that sting.
Yeah, he doesn't want cupcakes for that. He took a blend. He got the cupcakes in the conference, which cross-conference game, which helps him more than playing you in non-conference. So
I know. Matt's still top 5 in my heart, though.
Okay.
You talk so goddamn slow there for the start of that. Get a southern accent that bad. I knew before, like, you had a little bit of twang, but, like, I didn't realize that it was that bad, and I just realized.
Wes has got the twang, all right.
I don't have a southern accent.
Oh, my God.
What you talking about?
All right. Moving on to number 10. We're into the top 10. We got the top-rated SEC West team and subsequently top-rated SEC team. It's Texas A&M. If we can remember Joey, who is a connoisseur when it comes to SEC play, he had mentioned that he loves the Texas A&M team. He thinks that this is a really good team. I think he rated him in his top 3. He's top 10 in a lot of categories for projections. He's got a pretty tough non-conference schedule where he's got Texas Tech, Texas, Clemson, North Carolina State. But as we mentioned with Tennessee, things kind of drop off once you get into conference play. He's got a pretty light schedule where he almost walks through the conference except for one, I think, unfortunate week due to bye weeks in Week 9 against Memphis. Team is, I think, poised to be really good. He's got Najee, Kyler Murray, but I think his wide receivers, if I remember, is just a little bit lacking, which might just controls his ascent. Yeah, he's got Ayuk, Nico, Gallup, Hardman, Deontay, Darnell Mooney. It's a lot of depth, a lot of really good depth. I don't know if they like a Justin Jefferson type guys in there, but I think this team has got all the makings of being a really good squad this year. Maybe a little bit fragile in the running back department, but beyond that.
Yeah, the running back more so than the wide receiver is probably where you're lacking. I mean, he does have Najee Harris, but after that, you're talking about the next man up being Tony Pollard, who we've mentioned a million times, but he's been like the running back 3 or 4, not the 2. So maybe he gets. I mean, he's got Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, so he's got both of them, which is helpful. Some of the runs. The only problem is he doesn't have James Cook. So James Cook ends up being the guy that's running hot in Buffalo. Singletary and Moss can put up a freaking 0. I have them both. I dealt with that shit last year. That shit happens in Buffalo. That could be, the downfall here is that we're a little light at running back, but it's a good team, and there's some reinforcements at wide receiver on the tackle squad I really like. I would imagine you freaking love the wide receiver group
that's really good.
A&M brought in via the auction. I think that's a really good job. Again, it's probably going to be really good. I mean, they're going to lose Kyler, so they a quarterback next year. But it's probably a team that's going to be really, really good next year as well.
Yeah, you got to get some rookie quarterback next year and play him unless Matt Corral turns into something. But otherwise, he's got probably
get a rookie quarterback next year.
He's got still a shit ton of wide receivers to rely on, and I think like last year, we'll probably consider burning them when need to. He could though start the season 1-3, 1-2-4, or 2-3. So he might not burn him right away if he's not doing well, but I think he'll make up for it in conference play. Moving on to 9 is back to the Big Ten, and we are going to the reigning Big Ten champion, Benson and Northwestern. Top 20 in a lot of categories, 4 out of the 5. He's got a pretty average schedule, just over 50% opponent all play. His tough games are against Marshall week 4, week 5 against Navy, Rutgers in week 6, and then really the only tough divisional play for him, in my opinion, is going to be Notre Dame in week 10. So I think that game is his most important game of the season. He's projected to get 11 wins. He's projected to finish in the top 10. He's got, I think, again, a pretty deep team for this season. I think it's an all-in team, if I can recall, just like how good his team was last year. He's got JT, Jonathan Taylor, who I think is projected to leave after this year unless he wants to keep him. But he's got Fields and Wilson that he can mix and match as wide receivers. Pittman, Drake London, which he looks like he's going to start right away. He's got Amon Ra. He's got Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, Deontay Johnson, and Duvernay as a backup. But he's also got Kenneth Walker to go with JT and such, and Javonte Williams. So I think this team is poised to go all in, be competitive. We'll see. I think the biggest question mark is at QB.
Yeah, that's an issue. There's probably going to be teams that as we come down the stretch, that have better quarterback play and have similar rosters, would be my guess. Because I initially just was like, I like some of the other teams better. But then as you kind of sit down, and again, it's one of those where you got to peel away the crap. I mean, Chris Evans, Hasty, Joshua Kelly, Larry Roundtree, like, all that shit. Once you kind of dig through that, you're left with something at quarterback. I mean, Fields is probably the starter there. Mm-hmm. And then you're into the Jonathan Taylors, Javonte Williams, Kenneth Walker. Those are his 4. And then he needs another Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then one Elijah. Of Drake London, Elijah, or Rondale Moore. Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty good. It's not the best I think we've seen, but it all holds up. I mean, just because the running backs alone, that's a pretty good group.
Absolutely, and I think really what will do better for him than anything is that he's scheduled pretty evenly. Like I said, it's a pretty average schedule, which I think will benefit him, especially when he's making up most of his games in the conference and the teams that he's projected to play. As long as he gets past Navy and Rutgers, I think he'll have a pretty easy time with the rest of us, unfortunately, as I'm saying that as a Big Ten West team. So that's number 9, Northwestern. We'll move to the top-rated Pac-12 team, and that is the number 8 Boise State Broncos, coached by Jim. Jim is his first year with Boise. He took over from after leaving San Diego State last year. Top 25 across the board in all projections. Depth is the only thing that's lingering, and it's still in the top 25. He's got a really tough schedule with the top 8. He's got this week 1 matchup against Clemson, which I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but that's supposed to be the College Game Day game of the week. Then he's also got Navy. He plays BYU, Oregon, and then even Washington, I think, later in the season will be a tough game. So he even got a first-place vote this year. I think that was Joey who gave him the first-place nod in his voting, if I recall. Yep. So Joey had a lot of faith in Jim's team this year and gave him a first-place vote as well. He's projected to finish with 10 wins, be just outside the top 10, with a shot at, if all goes well, being in the Pac-12 conference championship and having a shot at the playoffs. So I think Jim's team is pretty well suited. He's got probably the best duo at wide receiver with Jefferson and Chase, and then he's even got Najee, so we'll see what that is. I think, again, the biggest question marks are his quarterbacks with Lawrence and Mills, but beyond that, I think this team is pretty good.
Yeah, this is a good team. You slept on I think that's is it Coastal Eastern? What the Pirates? Whatever Carolina team that is, week 2. That's a.
You think that's a tough
massive.
one? You think Corey's tough?
Yeah, Corey. You can't sleep on Corey.
Okay,
Can't sleep under him either.
You know what you're thinking? You're thinking a lot like Joey now, because Joey was all about East Carolina. So you need him.
Yard.
You need to talk a bit more.
But that's a good matchup there. But no, it's a solid team. I mean, might be one of the better running back groups that we've kind of. Michael Carter, Damian Harris, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs. That's pretty good. Paired with Jamar Chase, Gallup, Jefferson, Jacoby Myers, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Kadarius Tooney, and Dawson Knox. Not to mention he's got Drake London sitting on taxi. So I think it's a pretty good group. I think the quarterback play, obviously, I think the nod goes to Trevor Lawrence, who, as bad as Jacksonville is, Trevor Lawrence there was probably a 3 or 4 week stretch in there where he was like, hey, he might actually be decent. And then after the bye, he was kind of shit last year. So if he can kind of bottle all that up and put it over his season, I mean, I don't think he's a 400, 500 point quarterback, but if you can get 300 and some points out of Trevor Lawrence on the season, I think that's enough. I think that's enough.
I think so.
With this team, so it's a really good team. I like Boise State.
Moving on to 7, and we're moving back to the Big 12 South. It is Houston, Jake's team. They're kind of a glass cannon if you want to think about them in that way. They got a top 3 projected starting lineup, but they're they're in the bottom 50 for depth. They have a bit of a softer non-conference schedule and cross-conference schedule with teams against like Oregon State, who's going to be kind of average, Virginia, who's a little bit lesser than average, and Ohio State, Iowa State are supposed to be easier opponents. But then, as we've kind of keep stated, he makes up for it in spades with his division schedule, with Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and the last 4 opponents that he's got to play this season. So he's projected to have a pretty tough fight. So he's scheduled pretty well, I think, comparatively. He's supposed to do really well this year, projection-wise, 12 wins, supposed to be in the top 5 by the end of the season, with his only loss is supposed to be against Texas Tech, which I think could be very notable by the end of the year. So Houston, I think he's got JT, Jalen Hurts, David Montgomery. That's an incredibly good stack for your top 3 players. Ramondre Stevenson is there too. Antonio Gibson. Those are really good 4 running backs, depth pieces to have. Wide receiver wise, a little bit less than what you want to compare to a Boise State, where he's only got Ayuk, Bateman, Darnell Mooney, Amon-Ra as his top 4 wide receivers. But that's a really good starting, like 7-8 guys that you're playing each week comparatively to the field, especially with Jalen Hurts. So I think they're really good. We'll see how well they hold up injury wise, but I think they'll be pretty good this season.
Yeah, it's.
Oh, and he's got Pickens too that he could burn. Yeah, so yeah,
it's probably, and even, I mean, you didn't mention, but he's got Antonio Gibson, but he's also got Brian Robinson. So whatever happens there,
that's
for Washington, so he's got another starting running back there. And I really do like Stevenson out of New England. So he could potentially end up with having 4 RB1s, which would be insane. I don't even think he could start 4, but no, it's insane.
But it's a lot of depth. And he's got his handcuff for his only starting quarterback. So the only week that he doesn't have them is unfortunately the week that he's set to lose to Texas Tech. So he can't. I don't think he'll really find a way to win that week anyway, unless Matt Corral miraculously is starting week 7.
But yeah, no, solid team. I mean, I don't know if I want to be like, hey, yeah, definitely top 5 if they'd be in my top 5. Definitely top 10. Definitely a top 10. But it's a solid team.
Would you agree, Wes? Top 10 team for you?
Yeah, for
you voted.
Yeah, for Houston.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't see why they can't make top 10, especially like you were saying there. If they get some wins earlier on in the season and build that momentum, I could see them going into that tougher conference play with definitely a more wins than losses. So there. I also think Houston's got a lot of potential because my wife has family in Houston, so I've got to I have to rep their squad. So yes.
Okay, we'll let Jake know. Thank you for that compelling analysis. Moving on to the 6th ranked team, it's in the Big 12 South again. I think this is the highest rated Big 12 South team and Big 12 in general. It's Texas Tech. Brendan's team. I don't think they did as well as last year. I think they were pretty middling, but they are poised to be a much stronger squad this season. Top 10 in most categories with a top 10 tough schedule. They play teams like Texas A&M. They got UNLV. They got Tennessee to start the 3 of their 4 games this year, so they're not shying away from any challengers. They got Justin Herbert. They got CeeDee Lamb, Najee Harris. Backup in Justin Fields this year. He's got Marquise, CD, as I mentioned, DK, Pittman. That's a pretty good 4 starting wide receivers. And then running backs, he could use some help considerably. And I don't know if he plans on starting Kenneth Walker at some point, but I imagine he will pull the trigger if necessary, because otherwise it's just Najee holding down the fort in the running back group. But
he's playing anchor RB, Brian. That's
RB?
A very popular thing nowadays.
Oh shit! I didn't know that's a thing. I need to keep up on the lingo. Thanks, Wes. You're hipper than I am.
Man, listen, dude. I'm only hip because I got I got the wiggle in the hips. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my god, you Gen Z kids.
That's how you ended up with twins. That wiggle in the hips.
That's how you end up with twins.
Lewis, that's exactly right, sir. Right there.
All right. Do you have anything else to say about Texas Tech, Lou? Otherwise,
did I talk about them yet? No. I mean, good team. I piggyback. I haven't paid too much attention to what's going on outside of my world. So if Kenneth Walker is starting or close to starting or have some sort of timeshare, I think you got to start him. Because then that puts you Herbert, Harris, Walker, the 4 wide receivers. That's a solid 7 out of 8, and then you throw Pat Freiermuth in there. That's your 8. Nothing can go wrong. This team doesn't have as much depth as some of the others we talked about, so I don't think I would have them quite this high. And I think maybe some of the others we just talked about might have better depth situations. But I do think it's a good team. Anything can happen. Kind of position themselves in a manner that they could take advantage of having, you said, the strong 4 wide receivers plus Najee Harris and Justin Herbert, who's probably the top 2 quarterback.
Yeah, I think the top quarterback in my opinion, and not really have much competition. So moving on, top 5, which is Jake, the Banana Man, our resident proctologist. He has got a pretty good team. I think a lot of depth to this team. Maybe not some flashy top-end running backs, and he's definitely got some good wide receivers, but I think his depth goes a long way. Unfortunately, he plays in the ACC Atlantic, so he's got a tougher slate, and he's scheduled a pretty decent non-conference tough opponents this non-conference. I think in anticipation of not being the lead horse in the division, so he's got to kind of play some catch up for like an at-large bid, as I think was what he was kind of setting his sights on. But he's got to play like Kent State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M to start the season, and then finish up the back half of the season with Wake Forest, Louisville, the 2 tough games against Clemson and Florida State, which are his only projected losses. He's projected to be in the top 5 at the end of the year. It did receive 1 first place vote. You guys want to take a guess at who it was from?
Yeah, I definitely think it was either from Matt of the UNC variety or Jake's best friend Taylor.
Oh, none of them. Neither.
What?
It was Houston. Houston gave Jake his only first place vote. So
Wow. Hey, isn't Houston's name Jake as well?
It is.
That's exactly why.
He
Then it
probably
makes
got
sense.
confused. Thought he was voting for himself.
I think so. So I think Jake's got a great team, though, but a lot of depth, and I imagine you guys feel similar.
Yeah, no, he's got a good team. I clicked off of it. I was trying to figure out if I had access to the thing that you're showing everybody because I wanted to see my team, but because I kind of got bored with Jake's, but his team's solid. Hurts, Jacobs, he's got Stevenson as well, Robinson, Dobbins, Shark, Gallup, McLaren, Debo, Amon-Ra. I'm not really sure. I guess Garrett Wilson was his big get. I would have liked to see maybe him combine and get a Pickens or something that potentially could help him out right now. But definitely a solid team and definitely deserving of. Is he top 5? Yeah, rated 5. So definitely deserving of that. He's one of the better teams that we've talked about so far.
Yeah. All right. Moving into the top 5 even further is number 4, and that's Indiana. Indiana is the one of 2 teams this preseason projected to go undefeated. Mind you that the projection for week 1 is estimating that Zach Wilson will start, but we know that is not likely to happen. So he's in a little more precarious predicament for week 1. He does play 7 top 25 coaches poll teams with BYU, Air Force, Oklahoma State. Plays a tough game against Notre Dame week 5, but then in division, he's got Navy, Rutgers, Michigan as tough opponents. He's got a top 2 starting unit projection and a bit of a glass cannon where he's got some average depth. I think when we were talking yesterday, he was one of the more divisive choices. His quarterback room is definitely suspect. His running backs are pretty good with Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery, and Elijah Mitchell, and he also has Breece Hall to put in there. So it might be too much running back top-end stuff, if that's possible. But he's also got some pretty good wide receivers in Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and then Jacoby Myers to fill that out. So he's and Mooney. So he's got 7 really good guys. I think the biggest challenge is his QB room is definitely the missing piece. I will make note that Andy was really divisive on him yesterday, where he just felt like this guy was asleep at the wheel in terms of constructing his team, that there's some free agents that he could have made some better moves on, and I agree, but I still think this is a pretty strong unit. Definitely going to be in contention, especially in the Big Ten East this year.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with Andy. And I literally was just looking at clearly he's there, but he's not there. He could. I mean, why you have Lynn Bowden, Kelvin Harmon, Tamarian Terry. I don't know if there's anybody else, but those 3. Josh, Ema, Tora, Bahaba, fuck that is. I've never even heard of that person. Why you would roster that when your team is this damn good is beyond me. And again, there's a total. It's going to be one of those total mismanaged of the rookie, total mismanaged of the injured reserve. Although it does look like the only one eligible is Marquez Stevenson because Harry's already used his medical. Now again, this is barring some. When's the deadline tomorrow?
It's through Thursday. Once kickoff happens, then it's locked.
Barring that this shit gets cleaned up, but it's definitely one of those where it's starting to be like, hey, like you literally could have thrown anything else on this roster. Better bet. It probably would have, like, again, the chances of that shit actually mattering, no, but to throw in, I think I said this earlier, to take a guy and try to get something off, that's going to score 80 to 100 points, like if a Jalen Guyton's available, or even a Quentin Cephas, or I'm trying to think of who else. Just something to add there to help. I mean, because these other guys. I mean, there's guys on this team that are there's no point in even having them there. So I'm not really quite sure what's going. And I don't want to get too into it, but it's one of those that's just like, dude, the team is really freaking good. I mean, outside of the quarterback,
it's a good roster.
I think you didn't talk about Mooney, Freiermuth on there, Cole Kmet's on there. That's worthwhile. Albert whatever Okawuki, whatever the fuck his name is.
Jesus Christ.
Okawuki Bynum, Oka, and I need freaking Taylor on here.
Dude, you need some Grammarly, or you need some.
All right, put your Southern mic on it and your beautiful charm and fucking pronounce.
Okay, it's Wegbunham.
Oh my god.
Anyways, but there's enough pieces there that like I think it's gonna work. I mean, you didn't touch on Elijah Mitchell either. Running back shit figured out. He's starting through 3 running backs. Is that what we're allowed to start?
Mm-hmm.
He's starting 3 running backs every single week. The rest of it, Jefferson, Lamb, Myers, probably Mooney. That's his 7 and his quarterbacks. I mean, there's enough there that's going to work. It's one of those, like, the team could be really freaking good, and it could have put himself in, like, a position to be really freaking good for, like, next year as well if he wasn't asleep at the wheel. And that's probably what Andy was hitting. Like, this team could be, like, number 1 overall, like, this year and number 1 overall next year, like, if some of this shit was just a little bit more clean.
Yeah. So I think there's the sentiment that he could have done better, but I think generally for this season he's poised to be good. We'll see what happens with next season. Projected to finish number 2 in the country, top Big Ten East team, but doesn't mean he made the most votes in the Big Ten. Moving to number 3 is our very own Ricky. He's gotten a lot of notes in this podcast with tough opponents with a lot of things. He's the highest voted Big Ten West team. He's number 1 in depth this going into this season, and I fully agree. I think Ricky's got just a deep team for this year. He knows that it's all on the line this season. He's pushing in for a lot of pieces, and probably has some drop off next year. But I think this team has got deep potential with like 4, 5, 6 running backs to start and like 4 or 5 wide receivers to start each and every week, with the cream of the crop being Murray and Hurts being the top players, which I think Lou will probably say, well, he shouldn't have those 2. He should have transferred one of them, maximized his talent, but I don't think he would have gotten that. I think Ricky wanted to put all of his guns and eggs into the basket this year, and I think it shows with how deep this team is.
I guess. I mean, but still, I mean, he went after Malik Willis, so he got the prep done for the quarterback position beyond this year. I just would throw one of them guys out there. Throw Hurts, it doesn't matter. Throw one of them out there, because what will happen is just looking at the quarterback rooms. I mean, Purdue needs a quarterback upgrade. We just talked about Northwestern having an awesome roster outside of the quarterback room. Nebraska could have used an upgrade. Minnesota could have used the upgrade. Iowa's a fucking mess at quarterback. I mean, they're the big.
Hey,
whatever.
Viewers, notice how he didn't say Wisconsin.
I'm looking here. See if anybody else. 25 Rutgers could have used the upgrade. There's a lot more teams in here. Don't. Yeah, that's right. Even Maryland and number 4 Indiana, who we just fucking talked about, could have used that, and I would have been willing to bet that close to going in would have paid probably pretty heavily for that, which would have given Ricky more money. Because again, he's only talking. I mean, he'll split it up probably. Well, no, I guess it doesn't really fucking matter at this point because they're both seniors, so he doesn't have to worry about awards. So it's really, in all honesty, he's playing for 1 week. I mean, he's got both of those guys for 1, barring again the injury. But I don't know. I don't. Again, it's a luxury. His team's solid, so the quarterback But I just would have liked, if you're truly going all in, you have to take whatever money you can and dump it into something. He got Pickens sitting down here, which is good. He did Malik Willis, which is good. I just, as many pieces outside of quarterback, because he has that shirt up. If he didn't have Hurts, or he did, and he had those other guys, like if he went, oh, Hurts, we'd have been like, hey, he's got quarterback locked up, he's got running back locked up, he's got the, like, so just to say that, oh, he had to keep both of them to go all in, just that doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, no, solid team. I mean, this is kind of surprising for Ricky. I'm not sure who's helping him or drafting auction.
Whoa!
You gonna defend him? You gonna defend him here?
He must have been getting his auctions in the morning before he got into the whiskey.
He stopped drinking whiskey, so that must have been what cleared it up.
Yeah. That's probably what's cleared it up here. Is he's seeing these names straight.
That and one of the most critical pieces you guys are missing. He's been preaching this in the chat for the last 2 weeks. You build around Rager. He's been preaching that.
Oh, well, if he was true to form, he would have Greg Dortch on his team. If he was true to his word, Greg Dortch would have been on this team, and this would have been the number 1 rated team. He did get 2 votes in the coaches poll for number 1. One from Navy, who is a Big Ten competition, and then also one from Cincinnati. So they gave him and feel he's got a good team. I think he's got a great team. I think he's going to walk through the Big Ten West pretty easily, in my opinion. Only resistance I really see is he does seem to stumble in Week 5 against Indiana, and then Northwestern, I think, is going to be his only real competition in the Big Ten West. So that's Notre Dame. Speaking of Navy, we have them rated at number 2 in the coaches poll. They're another really good team. I think the Big Ten really stratified itself pretty well this year, where they got some really top-end talent consolidated into just a few teams, and they've shot up the board, and then we got some probably teams that are working on things for the next 1 or 2 years. But Navy's coached by Mike Salvo. I think he's maybe still in the chat, so Mike, if you feel the need, you can definitely hop in and make a comment if warranted. But Mike's got Jalen Hurts, David Montgomery, Najee Harris as his centerpieces. He's also got Cam Akers there and Darrell Henderson, so he's got his stable of running backs pretty nailed down. Wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Marquise Brown, Gabriel Davis. He's also got Drake London sitting there ready to use, with also some pretty great depth pieces at tight ends with Fant, Hawkinson, Cole Kmet, Alberto. I think this team is really solid. Got great projections across the board. Only projected to lose 1 game, which actually could cost him, unfortunately, the Big Ten East, and that's his Week 7 matchup against Indiana. We'll see how that works out for him. He does not have Jalen Hurts that week, so he hopefully sees a really good game out of Trey Lance. But it'll be an interesting fight for the Big Ten East. I think Mike's right there. Definitely poised for having an at-large bid by the end of the season.
Oops, I was muted. Yeah, I like this team. This is a good team. I don't know. It probably is better than. Who did we just do, Ricky? So I think
he's better than Ricky. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Just in top end, I like.
It's because he doesn't have Kyler Murray as his other quarterback. That's why you like it.
No, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, just looking at Ricky's running backs, I mean, Najee Harris, David Montgomery is pretty stellar. I know he had a couple. I mean, I think he had 3 or 4 weeks last week where he didn't play, and he still's got 200 points. So I mean, he's getting 300 points out of a healthy David Montgomery as well. So I think I just clicked off the fucking team, so I don't know who else is there. But I think I just like the I think there's a little bit more top end talent to this, and again, he has Jalen Hurts. The difference here, Jalen Hurts, Trey Lance, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. That's not fucking winning a league. It's just not. So I think I'd rather have like Marquise Brown, Drake London type guys with his. I mean, he's literally got three RB1s, and the ones that he's got are pretty legit options.
All right, here first. Lou, unsurprisingly, has no faith in Ricky. He's putting all his eggs into the Navy basket.
Yes.
So we'll unless Mike wants to chime in, I think he's just muted. So if he doesn't want to, that's totally fine. But we will move to the top team, which I don't think anyone wants to discuss any further than they have to.
Why?
They ran away with the coaches poll. It's because it's fucking Daniel. Daniel's good at every fucking league that we're in.
How does that happen?
I don't know. I don't understand how it happens. I think I blame Jake more than anything. I think Jake is letting him become this good.
Oh, I know why.
Why? Yeah, you too. You're letting him be this good. Why are you letting Daniel be this good?
Listen, the reason why Daniel is really good is because Clemson produces some really smart people. Okay.
Oh Jesus, he's not even from South Carolina.
Yeah, but see, Daniel talks real slow. He talks real slow to Wes. Steve's accent. Wes just lets him have his way.
Listen.
Sultry voice.
The reason why he's so good is because he is not talking as much horniness in the ACC.
Yeah, that's it.
Like
yes, he lets you guys just take over the airways, and he's just focused on the actual league. That's probably actually much more of an apt thing. But team-wise, I think yesterday we're not going to go in and ad nauseum. I just can't talk about Daniel's team and him being good at things anymore. But the only real pitfall is his quarterback room. There's no depth behind it. So if anything happens with Kyler Murray, this team is going down in a heap of smoke. But everything else looks good. He's got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cam Akers, Tony Pollard, Jonathan Taylor. He's got Darrell Henderson, so he's got that entire Rams backfield locked up. Wide receivers, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Drake London, Mooney, Sky Moore, Pickens, Valdez-Scantling. All those guys will be there to help him. He's projected to run away with his entire schedule. He's even got tough opponents against Boise, Air Force, and Texas A&M, and all of them he's projected to win by 10 or more points. I think it was mentioned by Matt yesterday was that he is supposed to project to score 100 more points or like 99 more points than the next closest team, and that's just absurd, and it's fucking stupid, and I hate it, and I can't wait for him to be bad at the leagues that we play in him with. He's gonna win, even though his dumpster fire team in your Cleveland QB league.
I fucked up, so I was like, and I sat down, and I'll be quick because I was gonna comment this as well. I had a league that had about 6 orphans, something like that, and I waited till the last second before I even dealt with it. Basically, went and grabbed 6 people that I knew would play. Threw them in there, and was like, guys, play it, free to ride. And I assigned them all the teams. None of them really cared what team. They're give me one. So I assigned based on personality or fit, and I gave Daniel the worst fucking team in the league. And I fucked up because the team is in my division. So I've knowingly put Daniel in my division, and I think last year I went undefeated during the regular season. I went all the way up to the finals and lost in the championship. So my team is legit, but now that I put Dan in there, like, I know it's my downfall. So some shit's gonna happen, some bullshit's gonna happen to my team, and then he's just already started collecting assets and picks and younger players that it's just gonna be one of those where I blink next year my team is gonna be 39 years old all across the board, and he's gonna have all the 19, 20-year-olds that are scoring 400 points, and I'm just gonna get my ass handed to me to a team that has been so bad. Like this team that I gave him Spurgeon win has been in the bottom probably 3 or 4 teams in the league's existence, and I think the league's been around since
16, something like that.
15, 16, 14, something like that. Yeah. So I mean, it's a bad team that has all. I'm giving it to fucking Dan because he's a dick. He can have the bad team, and it's already significantly better than what Wes Mike gave it to him.
He's good.
Lou, listen. I take away two things from that statement or that conversation you just said. Number one, that sounds like to me you need to step up your game to get on Daniel's level. And number two, Brian, listen. His team is not going to collapse in a smoke heap or whatever you said. He's got Tyler Huntley as his backup. So if anything happens to Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, per Lou, Tyler Huntley should be rostered in all leagues in a $0.
I agree with that, but yeah. I don't think you can rely on two injuries, another injury to happen and hold out hope. I think.
Listen. They was told.
Handcuffs, but.
You're right. You're absolutely right. There's better handcuffs out there. However,
who let him get this recruit class?
The fucking Wes. Wes let him get it.
It was my fault. I told you. Listen.
Drake London, Sky Moore, Pickens.
Yep, it's fucking dumb.
On top of what he already had.
You said, Brian, I think you said it's not possible, or I forget exactly what you said, but they told Columbus he couldn't make it to the United States on a little rickety boat and a single tank of gas, and he made it. So like Kevin Garnett says, anything is possible.
Yeah, we're bringing in the wise sage Kevin Garnett. All right, well, we'll close this up here with the just kind of running through how the divisions and conferences are projected to rattle out. In the ACC, no surprise, Clemson is supposed to run away with the Atlantic, followed by North Carolina State with 7 conference wins. Florida State's actually projected to do a little bit better than North Carolina State in the division. But right now, it's Clemson's to lose. In the Coastal side, mentioning it's theirs to lose, it's all North Carolina's to lose. They're projected to win 8 conference games. The next closest is supposed to be 5 with UConn and Pitt. So he's got a lot of room to maneuver based on these projections and shouldn't have much issue. Moving to the Big Ten, this gets a little bit dicier where we're looking at the East. Right now, the team that's supposed to get through is Indiana with 9 conference wins. And I think it's because of that one game that they play against Navy. Navy's expected to win 8. So really it comes down to potentially that game that they play against each other that week. So we'll see how that works out. With Rutgers and Michigan kind of following up in the division for the Big Ten East. Out in the West, we've kind of made note. It's pretty much Northwestern and Notre Dame. Me and Andy follow up behind that, but I don't think we really have much of a shot. To be honest. So Notre Dame and Northwestern's matchup will probably be the most anticipated in the Big Ten West, with Notre Dame and Indiana projected to move on. Move to the Big 12. It's been a while since we talked about the North, but Marshall's projected to win the Big 12 North. Their one game against Army is probably the one deciding factor. The rest of the division is kind of a scattered mixed bag of wins from beating up on each other. But right now it looks like Marshall is projected to repeat. On the South, it's kind of a bloodbath, but somehow projections-wise, it's Houston supposed to come out pretty unscathed with just a game over Texas Tech, which I think is a helpful indicator because I think they're projected to lose that one game against Texas Tech right now. But everything else, they're kind of beating up 5-6 wins, so non-conference and cross-conference play could be huge. And with right now, the Houston versus Marshall is projected to be the conference championship. We'll skip to minor just because it's in order. Right now, the MAC conference, Lou, I don't know if you're interested. It's right now supposed to go to Miami, Ohio, while it says they're supposed to be slated at number 2 on the screen. They actually get the tiebreaker over Northern Illinois in their matchup this season, followed by Taylor following at 3 with 7 wins, which I mentioned your game against him and where he's projected to lose could actually decide if he made the conference championship or not. So right now Northern Illinois and Miami are tied, with Miami getting the tiebreaker in the MAC. Mountain West, Surprisingly, the team that follows through, and this is a team we haven't even talked about, mentioned, even breathed, is Fresno State. They're projected to kind of waltz through, and they have an incredibly easy schedule. And they get a few breaks when they play UNLV and like Utah State, where they get through. But they're projected to win 11 games and finish just outside the top 40, which is kind of shocking. So they're probably really far off from even having a chance at the playoffs, even if they do well. But they're right now projected to take the Mountain West Division, and then it'll be Miami, Ohio versus Fresno State in the minor, with either team having a really outside shot at making the playoffs. Pac-12, moving to the north, the more anticipated, heavily debated one. Boise actually gets through on a tiebreaker with Washington. They're both getting 8 conference wins projection-wise, followed by Matt's team getting 7. Out of these two teams, when they play each other, the head-to-head goes to Boise, and they're able to squeak through in the Pac-12 North. And like we mentioned in the South a few times, the two teams that seem to be the one at the top are Air Force and Colorado, with right now Air Force projected to win their game, so they're the ones squeaking through. So that's Pac-12. And then finally SEC. In the East, it's pretty much Tennessee's to lose. They're projected to win 9 games, with the next closest being Joey at 6. But everyone else is kind of a mixed bag in the SEC East, so it's kind of Tennessee's to lose at the moment. Even Joey and Lewis's favorite being East Carolina. I don't know if they have enough right now to catch Tennessee. Out in the West, it's still, again, Texas A&M's to lose, kind of, with maybe Arkansas or Ole Miss or Mississippi State catching them. But I think right now a lot of people view Texas A&M as the clear favorite. So those are kind of how the weeks kind of figure out, and this is kind of how the projections fall for the conference, with conference championship week, with Boise State winning, Clemson beating North Carolina State, Marshall actually upsetting Houston, and I think a lot of that is due to players like Jonathan Taylor being out that week 14 for teams like Houston. Same thing with Indiana. They're missing Jonathan Taylor, and I think that is helpful for a team like Notre Dame. Texas A&M beats Tennessee, and then Miami, Ohio beats Fresno. So that's how that kind of works. And then,
Brian, can we go back to that real quick?
Yeah.
Real quick. You said NC State for beating Clemson. Clemson beats UNC there.
Yeah, sorry. North Carolina. It's supposed
That's
to
what
be
you
North
meant,
Carolina.
Wes. God.
Yeah. Thank you, though.
Listen, I'm just trying to keep him honest. Brian keeps
kept me
honest.
honest. Yep. Appreciate it.
Honest.
Kept me honest this entire time. You can kind of come in here and see which the teams are projected to win the bowl games. As a reminder, if you haven't paid any attention, teams that have 7 wins or more are projected to get in. Right now, based on scenarios, the only team with 6 wins that makes it is Washington State, and they actually win their bowl game. So a little bit of a fun fanfare where you can kind of see where your team falls. Wes, you did not make a bowl game. I'm sorry.
What?
Nor did you, Lewis.
Bitch. What?
Yeah, you didn't. You're not good enough. Your team's bad.
Listen, I have Kyle Pitts and DeAndre Swift. That's all I need.
That's all you need.
That's all I need. I have Kyle Pitts and DeAndre Swift. I'm good to go.
In the semifinal for the playoffs, it's Clemson versus Houston, with Clemson winning, and then Indiana versus Notre Dame, and Indiana actually gets some revenge from the conference championship. And then we move into Week 17 with Clemson completing its perfect season and winning the national championship. You can kind of look here for how the end of the season rankings fill out. If we want to look for where Wes and Lou are, 55 is where Georgia Tech's expected to finish, and 64 is where Western Michigan's expected to finish.
Hey,
so,
Brian, how many teams are there in the league? 99?
There's 100.
You know what? I will take 50% because we at Georgia Tech, we are balanced in both academics and athletics.
You're in the lower 50%. You mean 45?
Yes, that's fine. I'll take that. See, we also, Georgia Tech, are really good at math.
Yeah, you're good at math.
Except in that scenario right there.
So, yeah, you can look at this just as a reminder for payouts. Top 25 teams get a payout money. So right now, Taylor would just make the cut to make some money, and then division winners get a cut of some money, and conference championship winners get a cut of some money. So this is just a fun exercise to see kind of how the season is set up. The only other reminder I have for people is make sure you get your freshmen on your taxi squad and any other upperclassmen on your medical IR slots before Thursday. Well, the IR slots isn't necessarily as important, but don't wait to do those things. You don't want to miss a deadline, miss out on retaining some eligibility from years now. So things to consider. Hopefully this was a lot of fun. Lou, Wes, thank you so much for joining. I apologize that we had to redo this again to the people that joined us yesterday, but I think this was fun. I think hopefully a lot of people find some enjoyment in it, and we'll be sure to hopefully ruin Daniel's perfect season. I would really hate for him to be able to hold this over us. He holds so much other things over us.
Does he really
No, he
in
doesn't.
the chat though? Does he? No.
No.
He seems real humble.
He's very humble, but I hate that.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
Well, why is he not, Lou?
He's not humble. Check the PMs. Check the PMs.
Check the PMs.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm gonna get out of here. We're gonna go get some dinner and.
Yes. Hopefully you recorded it. If you didn't, too bad. So sad.
Yeah. Too bad. So sad. I will never do a podcast again if this did not record.
So should have tested that before we did it, but that's okay.
Should have absolutely.
Live by the sword, die by the sword. Good luck to everybody. And I'll see you next time.
Yep,
Who's Coach Fantasy 88?
I don't know.
Michael Savo was in here and he was Navy. I was wondering who Coach Fantasy 88 is. Okay,
well, now you scared him away.
Thanks, y'all. It was fun. Thanks for having me on, at least for a little bit.
Yep. Thanks, Wes. We appreciate it.
Y'all take care of yourselves.
You too.
Have fun with dinner.